What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 639 of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast, hot tags of the week. We got a lot to break down this week from all sorts of different avenues. We got some people joining some rosters. We got a bracket to reveal, a logo to talk about as well. Unfortunately, 2 passings happened. We got some boos, we got some cheers, predictions, all sorts of different things here. If you don't know who we are, I am Tony Mango, joined as always by Callum Wiggins.
Let's bang a gong and get it on.
And Robert E. Felice.
First of all, I don't know what Callum said there, but I liked it. Second of all,
it's another T-Rex song. I'm just making that my gimmick now.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm here. I'm kind of under the weather. You're gonna hear that. It is what it is.
Nobody's ever over the weather, are they? I guess when you're flying.
Really miserable people.
Well, we are also joined by you guys listening, so thank you, of course, for tuning into this episode. Also, let us know what you have to say about all the things we're talking about here and anything else you want to say. Maybe you have some T-Rex songs to recommend or something. Drop them in the comments section below. While you are over there on YouTube, hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed. Ring that notification bell and get those email alerts set up for when we go live for the post-show immediately following AEW Revolution this Sunday night. Of course, pick up some merchandise on Redbubble and TeePublic. While you're clicking around on YouTube, though, make sure that you hit that thanks button, toss a little spare change our way, and also click on that join button. That'll give you access to the same tiers that you see over on the Patreon. Of course, we got the Darkcast tier, we got the Pick Your Poison tier, but even $1 a month is greatly, greatly appreciated. Anything you guys do like that is incredibly helpful. Also, join the Discord server that we have. Chat it up throughout the week about whatever topics you want to. There's lots of different channels there, so it's not just necessarily all pro wrestling related. But, you know, if you're going to get into some fanboys talk and stuff, we have a little section of that there. Of course, if you don't know what Fanboys Anonymous is, go to fanboysanonymous.com. And I think we should just get into the hot tags rather than plug some more. Let's talk about, I don't know, I'm just going to pick a random one here. Tama Tonga has signed with WWE, or at least supposedly has signed. They haven't done any kind of official announcement for this. No, but actually, when's the last time that they had the Performance Center thing where they have this is the latest class? That's been a while, hasn't it?
Oh, not really.
I mean, I don't know if they would necessarily put him in there or if they would just bring him in as they did with Lexus King or, Jade Cargill or whatever. But, WWE hasn't officially put out anything about this, but it seems like that is the case by all sorts of speculation and stuff. So, of course, naturally, a lot of people are going and immediately fantasy booking him into different scenarios. A lot of people thinking that he should join the Bloodline. Some other people arguing that he shouldn't for multiple different reasons. One of them being he wasn't in the graphic of the Bloodline that they had put up on there on the press conference thing. Some people thinking NXT. Yeah, but when you include people like Nia Jax and you include Tamina and then you don't include Tama Tonga, I can see the argument for why that could be the case. But then, fair enough. Sami Zayn and Paul Heyman weren't a part of the Bloodline either, but they were a part of the Bloodline. You know what I mean? So, people saying he should go to the main roster. People saying he should go to NXT. People happy he's leaving and they don't have to see them because they don't watch WWE. People happy to see him in WWE. How you guys standing on the Tama Tonga situation?
I think he should probably be a big fish in a small pond in NXT for a little bit. I don't think the main roster will be losing anything by not immediately having him. Do I think he'll be in the Bloodline? No, but I think stranger things have happened. I mean, Rikishi teamed with Haku and WWE. There's precedent for this. They're Island Boys. I think, didn't The Rock say the whole thing started with a blood oath? They weren't actually related to begin with. There's levels to this.
I mean, as someone that watches a fair amount of New Japan, I'm pretty happy that Tama Tonga's gone to WWE.
You don't have to watch him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that's perpetually fine, and at his best can be really good, but for the most part, has just been hanging around New Japan for a very long time, and so maybe a freshening up of environment will do wonders for him. And let's put it this way, it's not like going to be a super long-term thing for him in WWE. He's 41 years old already. So, like, I don't...
You don't know that. I mean, look at Damian Priest.
Look at Sting.
But I envision that... I think that there's probably a good chance they'll put him in the bloodline, even though he's technically, like, Tongan, not Samoan. But... you know, that they'll, with the way that like WWE tends to operate with different, like, just putting ethnicities together, I imagine that they'll take that sort of like line of, oh yeah, that's close enough. We'll just we'll put you in part of that as well. He can be Tama Uso instead.
Maybe he'll be teaming up with Joaquin Wilde in the LWO.
I think I don't think that we need to speculate about potentially his name changing, because they don't seem to be doing that now. They seem to have now entered a realm where, okay, this person was a big deal in either like AEW, New Japan, or whatever, so let's just keep that name and gimmick attached to them. Doing that with Andrade, doing that with Jade Cargill, doing that with someone that we're about to mention on this podcast as well. So,
which I assume is more of a Triple H thing of him being like, yeah, this is stupid to do that, and I don't want to. Because when he was running NXT, it was like Samoa Joe is Samoa Joe. Shinsuke Nakamura came in as Shinsuke Nakamura. He wasn't like, you know, they just did some kind of weird amalgamation of his names or something. And I mean, some people, of course, still did. Like Sami Zayn wasn't El Generico, but
yeah, I mean that's for different reasons. And Kevin Steen chose the name Kevin Owens because his son, so he wanted to honor him.
And also, we have no idea where El Generico is anymore.
He's in Mexico.
So, I think he opened an orphanage in Mexico. Yeah, I think So, but I think that I mean I don't know what to expect from Tama Tonga in WWE, because he just doesn't. Just from someone who is familiar with his work, I don't think that he's going to be like a main eventer or even like a upper mid card guy. I think he's realistically what I'd hope for is that WWE also sign Tungaloa and Hikuleo and bring them over to WWE as well, because then they'd have a nice like collective that they can have in a tag team division, or like more of a faction orientated things. I think that would work best for all involved, and also mean that I wouldn't have to watch Tungaloa and Hikuleo in New Japan as well, which would also be a benefit.
Have you seen obviously you saw what happened, but have you seen the clip of Tungaloa striking Okada and people saying?
I watched that in real time. It's the worst striking exchange ever, of just like Tungaloa very, very slowly tapping Okada in the chest, and then somewhere vaguely in the head or neck area, then back into the chest, then vaguely in the head or neck area. Just it's the worst stuff ever. Like he's washed completely. So yeah, you should go to WWE.
The amount of people who are just like, yep, in hindsight, this is the exact moment when Okada decided to leave. It's very funny. I'm sharing it in the chat so that Tony can see
I think I might have actually seen this. This sounds a little familiar, but yeah, let me click on this and
like the name that Tungaloa lays into Okada. Like, yeah, really, really putting it on fierce onto him.
It's the throat strikes that get me.
Oh, it's all of it. This is awful. Yeah,
hey,
this is. I could have done a better job than this.
That would have done wonders in a Bond movie in the 60s. Okay.
Yeah, if you put this in You Only Live Twice, and fucking Sean Connery's gonna sell it like crazy.
Yeah.
They'll do that speed up thing that they used to do too. You know how those older movies, we would see those action things every once in a while where it was just like they hit it on like fast forward. Now, as far as Tama Tonga is concerned, I am not super duper familiar with him. I've seen a few matches of his, but I couldn't tell you like, what is his traditional spots or anything like that. And
he does an RKO. He does.
I would lean more towards, if he goes to the main roster, I would rather him be in the bloodline than not, because I can't imagine there being any kind of spot for him other than that. Like, if he just like went to Raw and it was just like Tama Tonga's on Raw, I'd be like, well, why? But if he is a part of the bloodline, then I'm hoping that this is more of a case of this thing that's been kind of pitched around, and then I'm kind of holding out a little bit of hope for it, maybe blindly, that Cody Rhodes beats Roman at WrestleMania. The Rock has his whole thing where it's like, you're disappointing me, and then we can set up a match later on. We'll talk about The Rock a little bit later. And then this whole tribal heir thing. My God, how many sirens are going to go around today? Sorry, everybody. This whole tribal heir thing that had been going on with Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa could be like Roman takes time off. Obviously, we don't see The Rock because we're not going to. And to kind of strengthen the numbers, that Solo in the new position of being the leader, at least temporarily, kind of interim leader, would bring in somebody like Tama Tonga to be sort of, like, okay, well, he's going to be a little bit of a replacement for one of those ranks. But I'd rather him just go to NXT. And I think that the way to do it is basically that Ava brings him in. Whether she's a part of this whole bloodline thing or not, because they've been really making her more just of a pure babyface. So I don't know if they're going to try to tap into that later on. But
first of all, I think that genuinely this is not me doing the bit where you guys crap on Ava and then I stand up for her. I think that they put her in this role so that she could speak more and just get used to that. And I don't think that that's how you bring them in. I think Gallows and Anderson are in NXT. Tama Tonga is OG Bullet Club. Am I as sick of Bullet Club reformations as the next guy? Yes. But it's right there. Like, just let him do that. Let him have fun.
I mean, I wouldn't be super opposed to that either, especially because I could totally see Gallows and Anderson beating Baron Corbin and Braun Breaker at Stand and Deliver. So maybe they beat them because of Tama Tonga.
Could happen.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Tama Tonga before we move on?
Other than the fact that Karma Chameleon keeps popping into my head when you say it, no.
Tama Tonga. Well, that's going to be a thing for going forward now, for sure. Yeah, let's keep on the NXT side of things. This kind of wrap up a little bit of the TV talk, but move forward a little bit too. The main thing that happened on NXT this week that I feel is noteworthy, we've had plenty of things that nobody would give a shit about, like, I don't know, did Dijak beat Luca Crucifino? Who fucking cares?
Well, I do gotta say, they're putting him with the D'Angelo family. They're putting Luca with the D'Angelo family, and it works. I like it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that it's like, why didn't they do that at the beginning? Like, that would have been the most obvious thing, but actually, they didn't play off the crowbar, did they?
Well, they did.
Or did I just miss that?
They had Jackson, D'Angelo, and Rizzo were watching, and he's like, "Hey, did you see that? Go get him, but not tonight because I have other business to handle." But he made it clear, like, I like that he used the crowbar. I want him in the family.
Oh, I was thinking about, like, if they paid it off later, like nobody used it later after that, right?
Oh no, but they should have, because it was just.
Yeah, because it was just sitting there. Yeah, we had some stuff like Brooks Jensen's going to go fight and lose to Obafemi and all. Dijak and Gacy are still going at it. I'll talk about that in a moment. But the big, like, two things that had happened on this episode, one being Charlie Dempsey won the NXT Heritage Cup. Long time coming. Been saying for, I don't know, since the existence of this thing that he should have probably won that in NXT UK, and then when they brought it back, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. They should bring it back so he can win it. And then they just kept it on No I Am Dar for like a year and a half or something. I don't know why, but despite the fact that it was heel on heel, and I don't know what their booking philosophy was for the past few months leading up to this point, because it just kind of arbitrarily was like, they decided to just go with this instead now. Fine, whatever. The road to get here was a mess, but we're finally there. Charlie Dempsey's the Heritage Cup dude, and that makes perfect sense. I'm really happy about that one.
Big fan of this move, and he's a great wrestler, and he can only get better from here. He can make that cup mean something. He can retire it if he wants to.
Ideally.
I'm not going to say ideally, because I think it's good for people that have things to fight for. I know you don't like the rules and all that, but Dempsey can make it work. And there's a Finley in NXT now, and I want to see them fight forever, because their fathers did, and it was great. I can only imagine it would be even better now.
Thoughts on Dempsey in the cup, Callum?
I have none.
Do you like Dempsey?
You've been more positive on Dempsey in the past, right?
I think that's. I honestly think that was just because he was William Regal's kid, and realistically, ever since he's been in NXT, well, largely like, I haven't been watching, so I can't really tell whatever. But nothing that he's really done has like stood out to me in a great deal. So
he's getting better. I think this was the first step in putting him in a position where you'll start to see him wrestle, and if you like that style of wrestling, he will appeal to a lot of people. I think this is the next step for him.
And I'm going to just say, just as like for one of the reasons why I just don't watch NXT anymore, if you tell me that Dempsey's better now than he was a year or so ago, I would be probably pretty surprised about that.
He's definitely appearing more. I can't say if he's better because I don't watch Level Up.
Well, I do think that this is a step in the right direction for him, and that they're basically finally coming around to doing what they should have done with him months and months and months ago.
By the way, William Regal's in the game. Like, he's got voice roles in the new game. He's the GM of Raw in the story mode.
Why the GM of Raw?
Because it's a fake universe, and
also he was the GM of Raw. So
yeah, he's been the GM of
Adam Pearce. Like, they could have just thrown Pearce in there.
Well, Pearce is in it as well.
I imagine he is. Yeah.
For anybody who's wondering, by the way, too, Brock is in the showcase mode, but that you just can't select him. So yeah, it's basically confirmation of what we were saying before. But the other thing that happened in NXT this week to go back and talk about is that we got the revelation of what the whole text thing was that we've been getting teases for. The man has 3 faces, blah, 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 evil, such and such. Some people thought it was Okada. Okada's just going to be in AEW soon. I believe it's next episode of Dynamite, right? Is when he's scheduled?
Potentially.
Yeah. So they had this awkward segment on NXT where Dijak had beaten Crucifino. Then it was, you cut to the back, you got the D'Angelo family watching the Crucifino thing. And then I don't know why they did the whole go get him, but not now kind of thing. Because it's awkward. Like, why not just like, you go deal with that and I got something else to deal with? It would have been a better wording, I think. But that moved over into Lyra Valkyria praising Shotzi and Lash Legend, and then revealing something to Tatum Paxley that we'll get into. And then they get interrupted by Rich Holland, which felt really weird, that he was just kind of like, ladies, get the fuck out of the ring. I got to cut a promo about how I'm upset, but I'm not upset. This was really poorly worded. It was so stupid and I hated it. I take things too far with Gallus, but I am just defending myself and so on and so forth. And then the words pop up on screen again. It says, truth will ultimately prevail, but there is pain bringing it to light. And Holland gets attacked by a steel chair from behind from a mysterious person who unveils themselves to be Shawn Spears. And it's Shawn Spears, not Ty Dillinger. Of course, people chant 10, but they refer to him specifically as Shawn Spears afterwards. So he has dropped the Ty Dillinger name. He is continuing on with Shawn Spears, which makes more sense. It's, you know, the better, more justifiable character, and could potentially be carrying over the chairman thing, but not necessarily. I don't know for sure how that's going to play out, of course, but his explanation afterward still didn't make any sense to me. I feel like this is one of those things that they don't have any real idea of what it's supposed to be. So they just sort of threw out a bunch of nonsense and they were like, fucking just go with it. I'm not loving it, but I do really like that Shawn Spears is in NXT.
Well, first of all, I think it's very obvious that he is carrying over the chairman gimmick. And I like that WWE has taken the approach of, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If they got over here doing this thing, let him go. And this is great for Spears. He can be a great trainer. He can still compete on TV, still tell some stories. Maybe the NXT scene is more of his speed. I think this is tremendous.
I mean, I at least have to obligatory say that I'm obliged to say, should I say, that there are kind of levels to this game. You know, one side gets Okada and Mercedes Moné and Will Ospreay, and the other side gets Tama Tonga and Ty Dillinger. But so you know, there are sort of like it doesn't actually like fit that much on the scales one way or the other. But I think that you know, he's a veteran wrestler now. He can do some good work in NXT with some of the younger guys and help see them through. I think it is interesting that he's maintaining the Shawn Spears character and the chairman gimmick. I think it feeds into what I imagine is going to be a growing trend, which is WWE's kind of probably recruitment policy moving forward for the most part is going to be the next in line program for like young up and coming stars, and then they're essentially going to try and utilize AEW as a pseudo feeder territory to just pick up talent from there and then just bring them into the company with all of their AEW character and story and history melded into that and bring them into essentially just carry that on in WWE instead. So whenever we see signings coming in, I don't imagine moving forward we're going to be seeing any name changes, any major gimmick shifts, anything along those lines. They're just going to be, hey, this person who was in AEW, they're now in WWE, and they're exactly the same person, but they're pretty much the same person, just wrestling new people and in new stories.
I think it depends on the people, because like somebody like Cora Jade, obviously, they were like, well, you didn't really establish yourself that much. We can give you a name that we can own. King
as well.
Yeah. But like, yeah, if Wardlow came over, they wouldn't be like, hey, this is
he's gonna be Wardlow.
Mike the Machine Jackson or something. Like, he's gonna be Wardlow. Like, if MJF came over, they wouldn't give him a different name. He'd be MJF. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to lead into an interesting dynamic now because, well, one of the main things about WWE is, historically at the least, it's been like owning the name of their characters, which means they have to change their name if they want to go to AEW or TNA or any other place. But if they're going to be taking people from AEW or TNA that get super over and just going to keep them over, like if they sign Jordan Grace, they're still going to call her Jordan Grace. They're not going to rename her at this point. So it means that if they ever leave and go to another promotion, they'll still be able to maintain that kind of, I guess, equity is the best word I could say. That's kind of like that familiarity of their character going over, which will probably help them like maintain the following going from promotion to promotion. So that's, again, it's another good thing about having a more diverse wrestling ecosystem now, where you can go to different places and get over and earn more money by moving to another company instead. That's healthy. That's healthy for the wrestling industry.
Yeah, I think we're only going to see things improve in this way, you know, and it worked out well on both sides. Adam Cole got to take all the equity he got from ROH, bring it to NXT, bring it to a few special appearances on Raw and SmackDown, and then bring it all the way around to AEW. And I think that's just better for the individuals. I know sometimes these promotions don't give a shit, but you know, they should. And it creates a healthier wrestling ecosystem.
It's just one of those things that I've always thought the amount of value that they get in owning a trademark for a generic ass name is so low that I never saw the point. Like, when you've got something like The Undertaker, then that makes sense to me. Like, you'd be like, all right, well, we don't want you to be able to take that to another company. But if you're like, I don't know, fucking Joe Hennig, did he need to be Michael McGillicuddy? Are you going to be like, well, you can't be Michael McGillicuddy anywhere else? Who fucking cares? Nobody ever would have mattered with that, you know? So if it's the difference between Lexus King and Brian Pillman Jr., anybody who cares about Brian Pillman Jr. knows he's Brian Pillman Jr. If he leaves and he goes elsewhere and goes back to Brian Pillman Jr., guess what? Nobody's going to go, well, he was better as Lexus King. It's the same thing. Fucking cares, you know? So Shawn Spears, Ty Dillinger, Gavin Spears, Stan. You know, I like the name Shawn Spears better, so I'm better down for that.
I do want him to hit Shawn with a chair. I do want him to hit Michaels with a chair.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to him at least threatening it and being like, you know, some backstage thing where he could be like, you know, call a little reference to that or something. So, I mean, other stuff happened in NXT that we don't really need to get into because nobody, you know, other than the Twitter people that are going nuts over Gigi Dolan and Jada Parker's asses on Twitter.
I like what Jada Parker is doing and how everybody is in a tizzy over Jada Parker. I think that's great for her. I'm genuinely surprised they haven't just called Gigi up for the fuck of it.
I'm assuming she might come up after Mania in the draft. She might be one of those draft picks that's like understated and just for the sake of it, the way that we get every once in a while. You know, where it's like
how Cameron Grimes is technically on SmackDown.
Yeah, I think she's going to be in that kind of position where they're going to be like, hey, you know, for the 8th pick in the 2nd round, SmackDown picks Gigi Dolan. And it'll be like, wow, Gigi Dolan, we've seen her a lot in NXT, former tag team champion, whatever. And then she'll just be like, you know, wrestling just random matches the way that like Shotzi is or something.
Well, I was going to say, if Shotzi wasn't injured, pair her with Shotzi, pair her with Cora, pair her, like, there's an obvious vibe options you're going for here. Like, just do that.
If they want to, they can. That's for sure. Also, Thea Hale was told that she's a loser. So they're continuing that story.
They need to get these people on the CW like yesterday. This was the most Riverdale, like, well, the old JC was a loser. And not you, not now. The old
now that
JC.
You're with the cool girls, the hot girls, and whatever. Yeah,
and that what's his name? Osborne was like, well, I wanted to go out with you, but you're not the girl I thought you were.
Yeah, it's cringy as all fuck, but it's going to lead to something with NXT Stand and Deliver. It's not going to play out immediately with Roadblock, but we do have Roadblock predictions to kind of, you know, carry on what they had done. Like Dijak and Joe Gacy are having an Asylum match. So that feud is continuing, and I'm assuming ending here with Joe Gacy winning. That's kind of the whole point, I would assume, for it to be an Asylum match is for the crazy guy to win.
I like that they brought back the name. I think that's a great name for the match, because for a while they were just doing it. They're like, yeah, it's a cage match. And look, there's weapons. So I like that they detached the Ambrose from the Ambrose Asylum, and they're just calling it that.
They've been calling it Asylum match for a little while.
Oh, good. I guess I haven't noticed. I like
just sometimes they refer to it as a Weapons Wild match or some kind of like other variation, but they've called it Asylum before.
I like the Dijak with like, yeah, I'm going to study Dean Ambrose matches.
Yeah.
He's great. I think he'll win here just because I see no benefit in Gacy winning. He's just a crazy guy. And I think Dijak should still be on the road to winning a major singles championship. But at this point, put Dijak against Obafemi. Why not?
I think it's the opposite. I think Gacy wins to be the next real big, serious contender to Obafemi. Because obviously Brooks Jensen's not winning. That match isn't confirmed yet for Roadblock. It might happen, might not. It might be just on an episode of NXT going forward and later on in March or something. But for some reason, Wikipedia has up a chairs match between Ridge Holland and Shawn Spears. I don't think that's been confirmed.
I can see that being added to Stand and Deliver.
Maybe a pre-show or something.
For the guy they just got from AEW, a pre-show, really?
Yeah, they've done things like that before. Because it's Ridge Holland. Like, yeah, who cares?
He's not good. Look, I like the Brawling Brutes, and I liked him when he was Luke Mimsey's with Pat McAfee and such, but he's not great.
He hasn't progressed. That's the thing. He's basically exactly the same position he was in before. So I like his theme song still. And he's a big dude. I think his role is to be a tag team guy though. This is his last chance kind of to like step out of that that sort of shadow, but at least from what I can find online, I can't find any confirmation that there is a chairs match going on. And you know how Wikipedia is, people can edit things all the time. So if that is the case, Shawn Spears wins. I can't imagine Ridge Holland just beats him. That would be kind of weird. There are 3 other matches, though, that are confirmed. Kabuki Warriors are going to defend, and successfully defend, I should say, their tag team titles against Lyra Valkyria and Tatum Paxley. That was the whole thing, that Lyra awarded Tatum as like a surprise for not interfering in her title match. So it's a good storyline thing. I still don't understand why we're getting all this revolving around Lyra, and the women's championship is just kind of not as big of a deal, but they're killing time and they're dragging their ass on this Roxanne Perez heel turn thing. But Kabuki Warriors are certainly not dropping those belts here.
No, I would assume that they retain that. Lyra, I will say, is getting genuinely better.
She is.
On the mic, in the ring, I'm totally getting the Lyra Valkyria. I see what they see. I see the experience they want me to see, and I'm looking forward to seeing her grow.
She's at a level now where I could see her in the future becoming champion. I don't think she's reached the point that she should be champion yet. But she's been doing a lot better. I'll give her credit for that. Tag titles for the men are also on the line here for NXT. Chase University is getting their shot at the Wolf Dogs, fully expecting Wolf Dogs to retain. Some kind of, whether it's the other 6 tag teams that are kind of in the mix get involved here, or if it's the distraction thing with the Hale ringside or something's going to happen where Wolf Dogs end up retaining. And then I think that we're getting Wolf Dogs against Good Brothers.
I hope it's just a 2-on-2. I'm not kidding when I say this is my favorite thing right now, because the Wolf Dogs are just entertaining as hell. And they just look like this. You look at them on screen and you're like, yeah, I can see this fitting in almost any era of WWE.
Maybe a little bit less early Attitude Era, but I could see that definitely working in Ruthless Aggression for sure. And what's the other match I didn't talk about?
Tony
the main one. Tony D'Angelo for some reason now has a number 1 contenders shot. It's him against Carmelo Hayes. The winner fights Ilya Dragunov at Stand and Deliver, which I am fully expecting, of course, is still going to be Carmelo Hayes, Trick Williams, and Ilya Dragunov instead of Tony D'Angelo.
Are you insane? You don't see what's happening here? You don't think that Trick Williams is just going to cost Carmelo the match, and then that's a separate match for Stand and Deliver?
You've been very adamant about the idea that you don't think it's going to be a triple threat. You put Dijak in there before, now you're putting Tony D on there. I still am on the train that I think it's going to be a triple threat.
If Callum cared, I'd ask him to break the tie, but he doesn't.
I don't, but I think that there seems to be this, again, it's a trend now. Everyone's thinking oh, they're going to turn this match into a triple threat. Oh, they're going to add Liv Morgan into the Rhea Ripley Becky Lynch match, turn that into a triple threat. They're going to add Sami Zayn into the Drew McIntyre Seth Rollins match, make that a triple threat. So no, we don't need triple threats. We just need singles matches. Carmelo versus Trick is the bigger match. It seems ridiculous to me that they aren't having the title match at Roadblock now between Carmelo and Ilya, whether that would just be Ilya retaining and then you build the Trick Carmelo feud as a separate singles one, or you had Carmelo win the title and then you make that match at Stand and Deliver a title match. Now they're in this weird situation where either Carmelo is facing Ilya Dragunov for the title, and you could potentially insert Trick Williams into it, but there's really no logical reason to insert Trick into that match because Trick lost clean as a sheet to Ilya in the last time he fought for it. So there's no rationale for putting Trick into that match. Or you're now in a situation where your main event at Stand and Deliver is going to be Ilya Dragunov versus Tony D'Angelo.
No, because the main event of Stand and Deliver is the crowd chanting "Whoop that Trick" as Trick Williams beats Carmelo Hayes, and Ilya's on the semi-main.
Maybe, but it still feels weird that Tony D'Angelo could potentially
definitely
be
weird.
Your chosen person to challenge for the title.
Definitely shoehorned for some weird reason.
Like, I think this one could obviously go either way, but I think with like guns in my head, I'd say that you should be going for a Carmelo versus Trick Williams singles match rather than just shoehorning it into a triple threat. So I think that I think that you have to have Tony D'Angelo win.
I mean, stranger things have happened. I wouldn't be let's put it this way. I would be more shocked if Tony D'Angelo won than if Carmelo won and then they did the whole trick thing. But at the same time, I'd be less shocked if Tony D'Angelo won rather than if, Kalani Jordan was fighting Ilya Dragunov or something. Like, yeah, they've done very strange last minute switch ups and stuff. But if it ends up being Dragunov against D'Angelo, holy shit, is that going to be one of those like, okay, nobody cares about what is happening here. And then on paper, I would think that would be one of the weakest stand-in delivers for it to be Lyra against Roxanne and D'Angelo against Dragunov, and then a non-title Hayes and Trick match. And like, then I'm starting to look at that as like, ooh, this should be a TV episode instead, Well,
that's what happens when you actually do developmental and you build developmental people instead of going, my God, let's call down Dolph Ziggler from the main roster. Well,
that's okay where Gallows and Anderson are going to put in that position, Well,
actually, all four of them are main roster guys at this point.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, Corbin's main roster moved down to NXT, but should just be main roster again, kind of thing.
I mean, Corbin's done everything there is to do on the main roster, including being the GM of Raw and the King of the Ring.
It also kind of depends, I think, as like if they want to bring Dragunov up. Because if the plan is to drop the title from him and move him up to the main roster at any point in the draft, I kind of can't see Tony D being the champion. Although then again, Lyra Valkyria beat Becky Lynch. So it's like, well, Tony D could be the Don of NXT and the champion at the same time or something for all we know. I don't know.
Well, wouldn't he have to be the champion to be the Don? Isn't that how you actually like?
You would think that would be the case, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the argument I'd be making right now if I was in the writer's room. He should be the champion. And I think, by the way, he'll win. If he gets the match, I think he's winning. They like him. He beat Ciampa. He was one of the first four guys they really pushed. They like Tony D.
They like the D. What can you say?
Yeah, they didn't air this on TV, but speaking of that, R-Truth showing up at Shawn Michaels' office and saying, I see a lot of Shawn Michaels in you. You're going to go far, Johnny Gargano.
He's going to call Ciampa. R-Truth is great. What a national treasure. Let's talk about a random TNA thing here. Alex Hammerstone joining the TNA Wrestling roster. Never really seen too much of Hammerstone, but I've heard some good things, so that's cool. It's a good pickup for them.
A great fit for the company, a great fit for Hammerstone. This is the benefit of having a number 3, because not everybody can go to AEW, and not everybody's ready to sign their life away to WWE. I think this is a great fit. I think he'll be champion within about a year and a half.
Yeah, from what I've seen of him, he looks like he's got real potential. And yeah, I think he wouldn't have been able to make as much of a splash in either the WWE main roster or AEW at this point in time with their already crowded rosters. So TNA is the next best fit. I hope that, well, at least for his sake, that he signed after he knew what TNA was going to be after the most recent couple of weeks. So at least he knows what he's getting into. But yeah, it'll be a good move for him. I think his first match is going to have a rematch with Josh Alexander.
Yep.
Soon. So that was a good match for him. Hard to kill. So maybe that's an initial feud to bring him into the company.
Still think he has one of the most porn star sounding names out there.
I think that was
Hammerstone. Yeah. I guess let's get into some New Japan here. The 2024 New Japan Cup bracket has been revealed, very, very quickly going to spit out the names before Callum breaks it down a little bit more. But we got Sonata getting a bye in the first round. You got Yoshihashi, Kenta, Shota Umino, Jack Perry, Toru Yano, Takahashi, TJP, Dave Finlay, Tonga Loa, Great Khan, Ishii, Chase Owens, Goto, Evil also getting a bye. They got Hikuleo, Bolton, Oleg. I remember having the back and forth of is it Oleg Bolton or Bolton Oleg?
It's Oleg Bolton now.
So it's listed in there as Bolton Oleg. It's just going to get confusing as all fuck. Shingo Takagi, you got Imura, Callum Newman. I don't know that name off the top of my head. Gabe Kidd, Yoda Jeff Cobb, Phantasmo, Mikey Nichols, Tai Chi, Brenda Rita, and Zack Sabre Jr. So a big group of people that mostly are some pretty well-known ones, and a couple that I'm not too familiar with, like the Callum Newman guy. Callum, tell me about Callum.
Newman. Hello, Newman.
Callum Newman is Will Ospreay's protege.
Yeah, he's the one who did the Oscutter with him and kind of got that torch passed by Ospreay. So he's going to be a big deal. Maybe not right away, but he's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, the way that Ospreay described him as that, I think Newman is early 20, I think he's 21 at the moment. And he said that Newman is much better than Ospreay was when Ospreay was 21. And so he thinks that he's going to be at his level even sooner than Ospreay was. So we'll see how that comes to fruition. But he's in New Japan for the time being, and that's kind of where he wants to be for now. But I imagine if he does develop at the rate that Ospreay did, then he'll be signed up to a big company eventually. I say big company. New Japan is a big company, but like a Western big company eventually. This lineup is pretty meh. For the most part.
Yes.
There's nothing really super I mean, the most standout thing about it is that Jack Perry's in it. So this is Jungle Boy's first foray into New Japan after tearing up his AEW contract on that New Japan Strong show. So he's going to be taking on Shota Umino, who is one of the I don't know why I keep saying this thing about Shota Umino about being he's one of the new hot prospects and one of the new top guys for New Japan, because all they do is have him lose big matches. He loses every big match that he's in, so he's going to lose this one as well, because they're not going to have Jack Perry lose his first match in New Japan. So he's the most interesting name out of all the people in it. So 4 people have gotten buys into the second round due to their performance in last year's New Japan Cups. That's Sanada, Hiroki Goto, Evil, and Zack Sabre Jr. are all going to enter in the second round instead. I mean, I don't really have any strong predictions about where this is going at the moment.
Any New Japan strong predictions?
I knew you couldn't help yourself. Golly.
If we were doing a video podcast, you would have seen a shit-eating grin on my face right then.
And you would have seen absolute stone face on Callum, which I think would have been great.
Or
I haven't even acknowledged it. I've just been staring at the card still.
Acknowledge me.
But I think that Zack Sabre Jr. has a good chance, just mainly because I want him to win the title at some point, and I think that Tetsuya Naito isn't a long-term champion, so I imagine that there's a very good possibility that the winner of this cup beats him for the title. Admittedly, he has another match for the title coming up soon against Jon Moxley at Windy City Riot, their next big American show, and I think there's also a good chance that Jon Moxley wins the title there. So,
wait, is the title on the line? I'm not sure if that's a defense or not.
Well, I think that if you have a New Japan show and you're going to have Tetsuya Naito in a singles match, if he is champion going into it, then the title will be on the line.
I'm going to double check. By the way, Callum Newman is 21 years old. This man was 16 in 2019. That's wild to me that he's as good as he is. I'm sure Ospreay's not lying when he says he'll be, better than him soon enough. Okay, it is listed as a special singles match. There's no title on the line.
Yeah, see, I find that kind of essentially if Naito is the champion by that point, I think because it would just be weird because if it's just a special singles match and he's a champion going into it, and if Moxley beats him on that show, it's like okay, but it wasn't for the title, so like okay, that seems really weird. But maybe he will have lost the title by that point because I don't think that show's until April, isn't it?
Right. Right now it's not because the winner of this will face Naito at Sakura Genesis.
Yeah.
So maybe it's Zack Sabre Jr. Maybe Zack Sabre Jr. beats him. I'd like to see Moxley win the IWGP World Title. I don't know if AEW can afford to lose Moxley ever. So, that is what it is. But I'd like to see it happen.
See, it would be difficult because if Moxley was to win the World Championship, he would have to be in the G1. And so that means you lose him for about 2 months while he's in Japan in the G1. So I think the likelihood is the person that wins this tournament is going to win the title next. My favourites for it at the moment are probably Zack Sabre Jr., Shingo Takagi, and maybe David Finlay, because David Finlay recently lost his title. He's gone back into this cup now, so maybe they've had him lose that title in order to elevate him up to the world title level. I think that's still way too soon, but I thought it was way too soon to give him any titles or give him the leadership of Bullet Club, and they still did it anyway. So why not take that next step and just give? Because really they're giving any old guy the world title these days. So why not David Finlay?
I've never been a fan, regardless of the promotion, of the idea of, you lost the secondary belt just to make room for the world title, because shouldn't the guy who beat you for the secondary belt then just be the world champion?
Well, look forward to what happens with Gunther in the next couple of months.
Although I'm still I don't know. We'll talk more Gunther a little bit. More in the next couple weeks, of course. It seems like it's going to be a Sami Zayn match, and I don't think that Sami Zayn's winning that belt at WrestleMania.
Well, I thought that, and I've even said that on the podcast. Pretty confident, and then they went and did this thing with Priest.
Well, I think it's going to be a 6-man match.
God, I don't want that. He's too good for that.
No, well, Gunther will win if it's a 6-man match.
I mean, it could be a way to have Andrade pin Dom, and then it's Gunther lost the title, but he didn't really lose. They could do that, but
that's creatively unsatisfying.
Yeah, no, none of this is anything what I would want it to be when it comes to Gunther.
The reason why I thought having The Rock cost Roman without Roman getting pinned would be okay is Roman barely wrestles as it is. And the visuals of Paul Heyman watching Roman losing without losing would have been tremendous. With Gunther, he has to be pinned. His shoulders have to be pinned. Otherwise, it's not honorable to him. So, whatever they do, it's got to be somebody beats him straight up. And I had thought it was going to be Sami Zayn, but then they got really intense with this Priest thing, and then I remembered that stupid Austin Theory cashed into the U.S. title. And, what if they just pussy out, have Damian Priest not even go for the world title? And then, I saw that great video package that Chad Gable put out on social media. And I'm kind of if we're doing fan-grown stories and, grassroots campaigns, it should probably be Chad Gable beats Gunther at WrestleMania.
Well, neither of those guys are definitely winning the New Japan Cup. Obviously, I don't have as much of a tap into the New Japan side of it as what you guys do. But when I look at this lineup, I basically kind of go, okay, well, I would assume from somebody who's only really just watched Wrestle Kingdom this year and then not paid attention to almost anything else, I would assume that the left bracket would come down to Sonata potentially against David Finlay, and then it would come down to maybe Evil against Zack Sabre Jr., and then Zack Sabre Jr. against Sonata, and Zack Sabre Jr. would win.
I fucking hope Sonata's not going deep into this tournament again. Like he already lost the title match a couple of weeks ago, so I think that they're going to cycle him out of this one. If I say who would be the finalists of each bracket, I probably think it's going to be Zack Sabre Jr. versus Shingo Takagi in one half of it, and then probably I could say David Finlay versus it probably would be Sonata still, but I think that then you'd go David Finlay versus Zack Sabre Jr. in the final.
I'm going to say Finlay, whomever wins Umino versus Perry, Zack Sabre Jr., Shingo Takagi, and then the finals being what I would hope for would be Sabre Jr. and Umino. And then Sabre Jr. wins. But I don't know if Umino is getting past Jack Perry.
He's very much not, I would say.
Well, first of all, like, I can dream. Second of all, how long do we think Jack Perry is going to be in Japan?
As long as AEW allows him to be there.
Longer than the CMLL talent is going to be in America.
Fair.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That's the thing, they're having visa issues.
Yeah, so there's just this report that came out recently that a lot of the CMLL talent, some of which have been appearing in AEW recently, like Volador Jr. and Hechicero and Mascara Dorada, have all been impacted on like visa issues. I think it's like nearly 20 CMLL people that are just going to be locked out of working in America for a few months' time, which is annoying for them, but also annoying for a lot of the promotions that have booked them over WrestleMania weekend to appear on their shows. So unless there's some kind of like resolution to be found here, it means that they'll only be solely working in Mexico for a while. I think people like Mystico are kind of fine still. That apparently they're not he's not affected by the issue, and there's a couple of others as well. But yeah, it's just this really weird circumstance where just like so many people from the same roster that have been working pretty seamlessly in the US for quite a few months or years now are now just all going to be locked out of it for a while. And full Trump hadn't become president yet.
Stay tuned. I don't know how much this will affect my personal viewing. I know BCC is going over to Mexico in
March, yeah.
At the end of this month. So that'll be a fun match to watch. I really enjoyed the CMLL guys. But as far as like the WrestleMania bookings, I think the obvious solution is veteran retired wrestler El Generico just steps up and takes all of their bookings.
I would assume that this is going to be stepping in the way of all these CMLL talent popping up on Dynamite, but also not really changing too much, because it didn't seem, at least from my perspective, that they had anything they were like specifically building up toward. It's not like there was like the big CMLL versus AEW blood and guts match or something. I kind of feel like this is more just like they're not going to use them for a little bit. And considering the way that they have used them, they've just been guys. They bring some other guys in. It's fine.
Okay, like, and this is the beauty of our podcast, but like when you say that, it totally shows that like you're not the target audience.
Not at all, because the people that are like going nuts over, oh man, Jericho had a match with what was his name?
Atlantis Jr.
Atlantis, yeah, like the big story of Atlantis having a match with him in the past when he's Lionheart, now he's a junior. I'm like, yeah, I don't care.
I don't know that a lot of people were going crazy. I think I saw one person, I can't recall their name, specifically say, this is exactly why Jericho should probably stop. I
wouldn't go that far, but I just like, to me, that's where it's like.
Between that leading into the Sting segment, that was the most Nitro thing I've seen thus far on AEW TV, but I like it. It's fun. It's this is what AEW fans wanted. It's just wrestling for the sake of wrestling, and that's okay.
I mean, I think it's an interesting enough story. I mean, Jericho wrestled Atlantis when he was like first going through in Mexico, and
he was partnered with Atlantis. He was partnered with Atlantis.
Yeah, and then he's just taken on his son to show him some tips on an episode of AEW. I think like WWE fans would like cream their pants if like Shawn Michaels' son took on Triple H in a match, and like that was like, or if that was like ever a thing, if Shawn Michaels' son got into wrestling as like a 20-year-old and Triple H was healthy enough to compete, if they had a match just based around the fact that they had such a long history, I'm sure people would get like super into, oh my god, that's so cool, like Shawn Michaels' son facing Triple H.
Yeah, well, but that's Shawn Michaels and Triple H. We're talking about Atlantis. In the American audience, who the fuck's Atlantis? You know?
No, but I think that like as long as the story is explained, you could have fun with it. It doesn't have to be like a massive deal, but there's still something to it. It adds a little bit. It's just like, it's not just like a random guy plucked out of Mexico doing it. This guy has, well, by approximation to his father, a long history with Jericho. So.
But speaking of Jericho, real quick, speaking of Jericho's roots, he's working a scramble match at Revolution. Like that's the most not Chris Jericho in AEW thing I've ever seen.
I mean, Jericho does have a good history with scramble matches.
That is fair.
But yeah, this is the only update that we have to the AEW Revolution card. Is not what I was anticipating. I assumed, if you go back to the actually, let me switch over our hot tags graphic to the Revolution pay-per-view point, because this is basically an extra addition to that. If you go back to that one, then you can hear us talk about how, well, you know, by the time we get around to the hot tags, they'll probably announce some extra matches to the card. We'll get the pre-show kind of situated, and we already know like what happens on Rampage. We already know what happens on Collision. So they still haven't announced anything for 0 Hour, but what they did announce is right before Dynamite had started, Tony Khan said the Meat Madness match has been put on ice because of people not being able to get medically cleared to compete. So the 3 people that were announced for the match are now in another match, which of course immediately got people to go, well, then who the fuck isn't medically cleared to compete? Which means obviously somebody else, at least one other person, was supposed to be in that match. They had held off on announcing that person, I'm assuming because they weren't sure if they would be medically cleared. And then they found out that they wouldn't. So then they decided, let's just wait for it. And it seems like that was potentially Miro and or Keith Lee. Miro would make the most sense. Keith Lee has been out for a long enough time that I don't know why they would even assume that he would be ready to go. But now that has created a whole thing with Miro. And what was the quote that he had said? Something like, I've been injured since September, and why didn't my boss just like text me or something?
I've been injured since September, and I only got medical treatment in January. Somebody else said this could have been solved through a text message, because then people wanted to get all into a la-di-da discourse about why is Miro handling his business on social media, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, it just, I wanted to know where Miro was. Period. Because this guy hasn't done shit. Like, he had a great run as TNT champion and then just said, I'm going to come to work when I want and do what I want.
He came in, had an awful character, waited a while, changed things around, did a cool TNT title thing, fucked off, and then has basically been used just once in a while ever since then. It's been
and
one of the most
paid, and God bless him, but
I don't blame him. Yeah, but it's like,
you know,
man, that has not been working out the way that it should have. But then it's been switched now. So the Meat Madness thing has either been scrapped entirely or it's been put on ice, as he had said.
It's been put in the freezer, Tony.
Yeah, the meat locker, so to speak. And instead, we're getting an All-Star Scramble, which we can assume would have the same sort of stipulation as what the Scramble match in WWE had, where it's, you know, the time limit and whoever it is.
No.
It's not?
It's just an 8-way.
So he's just calling it Scramble for no fucking reason?
Because that's what every other promotion in the world calls it, don't it?
Yeah,
when you have
just because WWE called one match a scramble match doesn't mean that every scramble match moving forward has the same rules applied to it.
Well, if somebody said it's a cage match, I would assume it would have the same rules as a cage.
But again, because cage matches existed before WWE.
Yeah, but then again, I have to go, see, Tony's not the target audience. He's taking a scramble match in terms of like when any other indie promotion or anywhere else in the world does a match with more than 5 guys, it's a scramble. That's just a way to say we're throwing a lot of guys in the ring and they're going to scramble it up.
I like fried eggs better. I'm just saying.
I don't. I knew you would go there, but I prefer scrambled.
I mean, I think they could have called this a million other names. I'm really surprised that this isn't a Face of the Revolution ladder match.
Probably because of the people involved.
But it's weird that we didn't get one of them last year at Revolution. We got it on Dynamite, and now we just didn't get one at all this year. So I'm kind of assuming that might be one of those things that maybe Tony Khan's not the biggest fan of that. Maybe that was a Cody Rhodesism or something.
I highly doubt it. They did it after Cody left.
Once. But they did it on Dynamite instead of at Revolution. That's what I'm saying.
I think
after Cody leaves, it's only been on Dynamite one time and then not on this one. So it's weird, I think. But they could have had these people in a ladder match. Would have been perfectly fine. Instead, we're getting the 3 people that were announced for the Meat Madness thing. Lance Archer, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Wardlow. The other people that have been added to there are Chris Jericho, Hook, Brian Cage, Dante Martin, I was a little bit surprised about, and Magnus. And this is now for a future title shot. Maybe Meat Madness would have been. I don't think that they had said that ahead of time. But my perception of this has switched over from Wardlow is probably going to win to, I guess Wardlow was not meant to win because they probably were going to have whoever that other person was, which now we can kind of assume it was Miro, to then just...
And Keith Lee. He said Miro. He said straight up, I want Miro and I want a Miro and Keith Lee. They're not ready.
Now I'm going Jericho. But I could see anybody winning this because in the past, AEW has had plenty instances where like a Dante Martin in this match is like the whole reason that they did that is because let's just set up a title match for Dynamite and it doesn't really need to matter who is fighting for the title. They win this to get the opportunity to fight for the title and then they just get swatted down by Joe. So it could be anybody and I wouldn't be too shocked. It could be the reason why Hook gets a rematch. It could be a setup for somebody like a Wardlow to get a title shot, but I don't think so anymore. I'm leaning towards Jericho, though.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think it should still be Wardlow.
Well, it all depends on whether the initial Meat Madness match was going to be for a world title shot or not.
And have they said that this is for a world title shot?
Yes.
Okay.
The winner will receive a future AEW World Championship match.
All right.
It doesn't say that it has to be like they're the absolute next challenger. It just means they'll get a title match.
Doesn't the Face of the Revolution guy usually just fight on the Wednesday after?
It depends. I mean, they've always been a bit like flippant with those rules, whether it's just like holding a chip that gives you a title shot whenever you want it, or whether it's just, the week or month afterwards you get the match. So they've never been super consistent about that.
So my follow-up question would be, has Jericho ever wrestled Samoa Joe?
I couldn't answer that with any confidence.
I'm gonna Google.
That's where cage match is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna cage. I'm gonna go to cage match real quick because that might change my perspective as well.
Because I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but yeah, it doesn't seem like that potentially that he would have done.
So they've done tag matches. Okay, so they have had a match on Raw in April 17th of 2017, and they had another match on Raw. Wow, they worked a lot in a 2-month frame in 2017.
That's kind of how WWE works. So.
That house show tour used to be crazy.
That's how WWE works. That's how wrestling works. You put people in a feud for a couple of months' time, and then you move on.
I mean, like they literally just, it was mostly house shows, and I'm forgetting like they used to run a lot of those. So maybe you run Jericho Joe. Either way, I think whomever wins is your male main event of Big Business.
But I think, having a look at the lineup, I think that Jericho is probably the best shout to do it, just so you can have a good one-on-one match with Samoa Joe with a established name. But you could do that with Lance Archer. He's always good for like a one-off title match. None of the guys that are in this match are going to beat Samoa Joe for the title anyway, so there's no real risk of picking anybody to get the victory. But
if they put Dante in there, it's just because they want to give Dante some shine because they like him in that 2002 Jeff Hardy role where he can fight for a championship. You won't necessarily win it for a while.
I kind of think that he's in the match just to do some cool stuff with Magnus. And
there's also that too.
And then potentially eat the pin. Out of the choices, I probably would go with Jericho as well. But it'll be interesting to see how this match works in practice, considering this wasn't the initial plan. And so it's just throwing a lot of people into one match together and see how it works out. So it could be a clusterfuck. It could be fun. Who knows? Could be both.
I'm going to make it a 3-for. Let's say Jericho wins. Jericho versus Joe at Big Business.
That makes the most sense to me as far as if you want the most, the big name against big name kind of thing. No other matches or anything added to the Revolution card, so no more updates elsewhere for that. Let's talk about this little AEW nugget of hot tag. The AEW Dynamite logo is being changed. They didn't start it yet. The graphics that we're on this week are the traditional ones that we've been seeing for a while, but we do know that the new logo is out there. You can see that. It's very pointy, different type of font than what the other one was. The other one's very blocky. I like it enough. I dislike it in some ways.
I like that they have a logo because the original Dynamite logo was just font in white. So I like that they have a logo, and I like that they're really stepping it up in some ways. There's a lot of things aesthetically I'm not liking. I think they're too LED focused. I'm hoping some of that gets toned down when we see the new arena and stuff. But it's the logo itself I'm a fan of because I like something that says, hey, we tried a little.
See, I still look at that. My logo sensibilities is it's still just font. Yeah, it's not anything else. There's nothing to it. They just found a different font that they liked and then they typed it out. So, I'm not the biggest. This is where I nitpick about the way that certain things look. I've never been the biggest fan of when people have fonts for logos. Where they just take the first and the last letter and they make them bigger, unless it serves a purpose. The way that Dynamite is with this, it's just a capital D and a capital E, and I don't see why DE needs to be capitalized. I know that aesthetically it looks a little bit better, but to me it's like Dynamite D, and I just don't like that. So it would work for a lot of other things. It's very Power Rangers-esque, as you had mentioned, I think, on Facebook and Twitter.
It is very Power Rangers.
It looks like they almost directly bit off of that, which I like that logo. But yeah, it's not going to change anything one way or the other for me.
I hope they got a new theme song. I want to see a nice overhaul. AEW is entering a unique time in the company where they're building a lot behind the scenes. They hired Jen Pepperman. They're they're going from this fun company and yay Tony to okay, now they have infrastructure and they have plans, and I'm excited to see how that gets factored into certain things going forward and what the company will be like in 2 years' time.
It's pretty interesting. Just by Googling this, I just came across. I'm going to shout out this person. Massey Model Preet 1987 on DeviantArt. April 25th, 2023, they put out a logo alternate concept of Dynamite that looks so much like this one.
Well, if you would like to drop the link so we can see it.
They did two of them. Here, I'll put that in Skype. Obviously, for anybody else that's listening, you can just Google them. But this is basically kind of the same. I wonder if they saw this and then they were like, yeah, let's do something similar to that. That person probably should get a little bit of a paycheck, I think.
Okay, you know what? That is rather similar.
Yeah. That's interesting. Shout out to Massey model pre-1987.
It's not like they're afraid of hitting people up on social. But I could see them looking at that and going, yeah.
You should put something up on Fightful about that. Maybe I got you a scoop. You heard it here, folks. He won't do it. Logo wise, I know you don't necessarily care too much, Callum, but do you have any thoughts?
That's fine.
Do you think that there's like a certain aesthetic that they should potentially change other things for, like that you'd like? Because we went from the whole like the splash of colors, fireworks type stuff, and like Rampage has all the lightning, and now Dynamite's for the last little bit just had this like red, white, and blue light show thing or something, which I think it's fine, but it's generic.
Just get rid of the LED screens.
Yeah. I hate those.
That's just as I'm not saying it's bad that WWE have it, but like WWE have their own aesthetic, have your own aesthetic. Don't put LEDs everywhere. It's really like, for me, it's off-putting. So just go back to a more, I don't say conventional, but more traditional look and feel of the product based on what it was initially. Don't need to overdo things with too much like saturation.
Is there any aesthetic like in history, Callum, that you really like? Oh yeah, I like this look for my wrestling shows.
Not particularly. Nothing that stands out anyway.
I know a lot of people would probably immediately go to like, man, I miss the dark and grittiness of 1998 WWF or something, but I kind of like a lot of what they got now. I'm pretty generic enough like that.
Yeah, I don't see, it's too generic for me. I like, we know that my preferred is like the Ruthless Aggression era, where everything had unique stages and everything looked
that I do agree
from
on.
The other.
Yeah, like I think that they make hand and fist enough money that they could make Backlash look interesting, and they can make whatever. Yeah, they could do that stuff. But
I think that, like, yeah, there definitely should be like unique sets for special shows and stuff. But I think that, like, because WWE is such a like heavily focused on production and entrances and that kind of like the aesthetic surrounding the ring, I think that AEW's aesthetic should focus on like I would say that it shouldn't distract from what's happening in the ring. So it should be more understated. And like the main thing should just be, you can still have like some pyro and some cool things, because entrances still are important, but I think that the main focus should be on making the stuff that happens inside the ropes more stand out, and not have like, you know, some glitzy LED ring like board across the ring side area instead, and just, you know, try and be a bit more a bit more muted, I'd probably say.
I just realized that we didn't talk about this one thing on Roadblock. Now that I'm looking at my hot takes list, the "See You Soon" tease on the beach. I'm assuming it's Sol Ruka.
It's Sol Ruka. She's back.
Assuming that that's the case. Could be something different, but that would make the most sense. Just figured I'd put it out there.
I hope she picks up where she left off. I was super high on her potential in like last year before she got hurt. I hope she picks up right from that. She was really good.
All right, I got 3 things down left on my hot tag list. I guess let's get into this one. 2 people passed away this week. from pro wrestling history, Ole Anderson and Virgil. Obviously, first things first, condolences go out to everybody. But, we normally do our little roundup here of memories, thoughts, big moments of people's careers, all that good stuff. One more match, maybe toss out if we have any suggestions of that. I can't speak much to Ole Anderson. I never really followed a lot of the old time wrestling stuff, especially when it comes to NWA and WCW. And the Four Horsemen to me is a thing that, like, I couldn't name you all the people that have been in the Four Horsemen, to be honest, but I do tend to just like look at the group as a whole rather than specific instances of if somebody could be like, oh, this great Ole Anderson thing that he did in that portion of that faction or whatever. But what about you guys? Ole Anderson, any standout things to talk about?
For me, when I think of Ole in the ring, I think of a lot of the stuff he did to help Arn, and specifically, he and Arn had a match with the Rock and Roll Express, Starrcade 86. I enjoyed that match a lot. I think it's, it was one of my first introductions to like old school tag team cage match wrestling, where you don't get it when you're younger, but once you understand the history of the industry, you start to like that stuff way more. He was a great promoter for the Georgia territory, and a lot of his stuff kind of tails off right around the time that, Calvin and I are born. But in terms of the history of the industry and the territory era, he's one of the real powerhouses. And obviously there's the legacy of, he was one of the original Four Horsemen. And that whole stable created the idea of the cool heel faction. And he was really good. And condolences and shame.
Yeah, so I don't really have any like major standout memories of Ole Anderson because he retired 6 years before I'd even started watching wrestling. So yeah, and I haven't really gone back to watch a lot of old stuff. But yeah, being a member of the original Four Horsemen establishes like a really long-term legacy for him. The fact that he was part of this quote-unquote Anderson family, which wasn't a family, but still they went the approach with that, with the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, first with Gene Anderson and then with Arn Anderson following that. And then he was like quite heavily involved in like the booking side of things, both for like Georgia Championship Wrestling and then future for like towards the end of his career in WCW. And like he's kind of, well, two things that I am aware of him being behind are the Black Scorpion angle, which is, I guess, the precursor to the Devil angle. And almost as bad. But then also, he's the voice of the Shockmaster.
He was also the voice of Black Scorpion. Same voice.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Haku recently just saw the footage of Shockmaster. That's a funny thing going around right now.
That's my favorite article I've ever done. Haku just belly laughing at the Shockmaster is tremendous.
But as I say, I can't really attest too much for his actual the work that Ole Anderson did, but it's definitely left a notable mark on the history of the WCW and the more NWA side of pro wrestling.
Now, Virgil, I can speak more to. Obviously, he was a WWF guy, so I'm much more familiar with his career there. I did see the unfortunate Vincent stuff in WCW, which I thought was really stupid and I didn't really like and all. But when I think of Virgil, I immediately, of course, think to the biggest thing that he ever did, which was he teams up with $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. He is the bodyguard. He is arguably one of the top heels in the company, probably like number 4 or so at one point, maybe at the most. And then eventually has the big switch over where he turns babyface and defies his boss and then wins that $1 Million championship and all. I thought it was one of those great stories that they had told. Never really manifested anything else after that point, but yeah, Virgil always had a little bit of a space in my heart from that as a fan. And I don't remember if it was the absolute first show that I ever went to, because it's hard for me to kind of pinpoint. Like, I know that like the first pay-per-view I ever went to was In Your House Mind Games. And I know that I went to that before I went to a house show with WWE. And I know I went to some like NWA crossover live show things that were like just house shows and stuff. But they had a show one time. It was either the first show I ever went to or it was around the first show at my middle school in like 1995 or so, where it was supposed to be headlined by King Kong Bundy, who's I've said before, it's the brother of my gym teacher, Mr. Pally's. And it was supposed to be King Kong Bundy against Doink the Clown. So I remember being like, hell yeah, man, like this is going to be so fun. We're going to get Doink the Clown. We got King Kong Bundy. This is cool. And Doink couldn't make it. So they replaced him by Virgil. And I remember being like, oh, well, that's not quite the same. But then again, like I got a picture signed with Virgil, and I might have to try to dig that up somewhere and post that or something. But yeah, that was like one of the very first main events of a show that I had ever seen was King Kong Bundy against Virgil. So there's also a little bit of that for me where I'm like, Virgil, man. Hope he's getting a lot of fuck money in heaven. And he's been a character to follow the past couple of years, for better or worse, you know?
Yeah. Virgil, when I think of Virgil, I think of Olive Garden breadsticks, which is just not true. Like, this man loved Olive Garden, and he loved his breadsticks and his meat sauce.
Look, the breadsticks are good. That fucking you get that never-ending soup salad and breadsticks thing. That soup, chicken gnocchi, I'll fuck with that. But man, that meat sauce, no.
They also have a good carbonara. I think Olive Garden gets too much hate, but that's not what we're talking about.
Snack talk a little bit.
Virgil, it's weird to think about. Like, he was one of the most important characters of the Hogan era. Yeah, we can look at it now and go, yeah, and he also became like the famous jobber guy. And there's the famous picture of him at the convention with no line that I think kind of became his legacy in later years because people just wanted to crap on him. But Virgil was an important character to the point where they brought him back in 2010. He had the run with Teddy DiBiase Jr. And that's really cool. I hope that, Virgil's loved ones are okay. I know the end of his life, he and Ole, quite frankly, the end of their lives were marred by health issues. So I hope that there's some rest there. But mostly, I think it's just a great time to reflect and watch some of these genuinely iconic moments featuring guys like Virgil and Ole.
Yeah, I mean, I like similar to Ole, I can't really talk too much about the Virgil stuff either because I'd probably count on less than two hands how many matches I've seen of Virgil to completion. So yeah, I can't really say from the matches I did see, like, he was fine as a wrestler. Like, he did some good stuff. Wasn't like anything super special, but he got that moment with the story they'd built up for ages with him and Ted DiBiase winning the belt from him. And then the most other memorable thing I know about him is the fact that he was named first to mock Dusty Rhodes and then later in WWE to mock Vince McMahon. So basically he was just there as a rib to people that the promoter that he was working for hated. So
yeah, it's a weird little factoid, right?
Yeah, I guess it's a good gig if you can get it. So
yeah, so
he was also like on one of the first Dynamites as a Soul Train Joe, and he was with Jericho for some reason.
If you were to have a one more match kind of scenario for Virgil, how do you think you could like put a bow on his career? Because they never really got an opportunity to do anything when it came to like, Ted DiBiase Jr. Had his whole like $1 million championship and stuff, but we know how that all fucking played out. And like, nobody's holding that belt now. Nobody's really even doing like a rich guy gimmick or something to where that could work out. But nothing really springs to my mind as far as like what to do with Virgil if that would be the case. Got any ideas? Any fantasy booking concepts? You've
seen the Mimosa Mayhem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you do Virgil versus DiBiase in the Meat Sauce Madness, and you have him beat DiBiase and send DiBiase swimming in a pool of Olive Garden meat sauce.
Instead of the kendo stick, it's breadstick.
Yes.
And then people chant, "We want tables." He sets up the table like he did outside of like Madison Square Garden and stuff. Maybe it would have been kind of cool to see him do something with JBL. Did he ever do anything with him?
No,
I didn't think so. But yeah, could have tapped in that a little bit maybe. But R.I.P. to Ole and Virgil. Always unfortunate to hear about passings in pro wrestling. Let's talk about these two topics, round things out here. These are both Twitter-based topics. We're going to have a different type of discussion for both of them, too. One of them is about Maxxine Dupri. If you didn't see it, there's a video out there of Maxxine wrestling on a live event, and the person that's recording it is booing her. And this has created some backlash where people like Zelina Vega, Rhea Ripley, Becky Lynch, and others have been going to bat for Maxxine Dupri, saying like, fuck you for being like critical and booing her. She's great. We love her. Becky had said something about like, if I hadn't sworn off having a tag team partner, Maxxine would be my top choice. And then of course, you can make the argument the other way around too, where it's like, okay, well, the guy's booing her because he doesn't like her wrestling. And I kind of don't see a problem with booing somebody that you're not a big fan of. I know a lot of people are going to take that as like me being a horrible person and all, but I see the defense. I see the reason why the boos are happening because look, let's be honest, Maxxine isn't the best wrestler that's ever been out there. She's learning, but part of learning is taking criticism and, applying it. She's getting better. She's not, at a level right now that I think that she's amazing or anything, but maybe she'll get there. I think everybody just needs to fucking calm down.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that's... Yeah, this has been just been blown out of all proportion just because, I know that she's new to this and she's working hard and I don't want to take anything away from the effort that she's putting into it. But for fuck's sake, she works for the biggest wrestling promotion in the world. So surely, and especially with the standards of wrestling skyrocketing in the last decade or so, do you not think that fans should expect a certain level of competence when they're paying good money to watch people perform? And if they believe that the person that is performing is not up to the standards that they expect, and realistically, rather than jumping down the throats of fans and saying, "Oh, why are you booing her? She's doing her best," they should be aiming their anger towards, I'm not supposed to the company, but people putting her in this position before she's ready to do so.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you can only really learn by performing in front of people and getting these kind of responses. So you need to be in any kind of area of the entertainment industry, you need to be thick-skinned. And hopefully she utilizes this as takes this not so much as a positive, but uses this as motivation in her continual quest to improve. And hopefully she does continue to improve as she has been over the last few months. But I think that, I don't think that having a go at fans or saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be booing people." It's like they've paid their tickets. They have a right to boo or cheer whoever they want. If the recording was someone hurling out some kind of like genuine abuse or some sort of like something malicious or something like, misogynistic at her, then I'd totally be on the side of everyone saying like, yeah, this is don't do that. That's like, but if they're just like saying, oh, I didn't enjoy the match she was in, I'm going to boo her. That's like, yeah, you totally have the right to do that. So yeah, and I understand the reaction of like some people in the locker room. They want to show camaraderie, and they don't. Like they actually know this person and they work with this person, so they don't want to. They want to make sure they continue to feel encouraged and supported, which is totally fine. But I think that just saying that is not going to make the booing go away. If anything, it's just going to make the booing happen even more vociferously than it was beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, Callum said it very well there. My view on this is Maxxine is as good as she can be for the level she's at. And I get people being upset that the guy like did this and then uploaded it. And there's the whole idea of like, well, shouldn't you be more mature for your age? Sure. But I also think, all right, the insults hurled, while hurtful, weren't insanely malicious. Like Callum said, I hope that she uses this as fuel. But I also think that it's okay to not... Everybody doesn't need to be Becky Lynch. And I think like that's part of the problem of where we're at right now with pro wrestling is the level of wrestling has become so good that they think everybody needs to be able to do moonsaults and this and that. And it's like, Maxxine is fine. And she has admitted, just like Chelsea has admitted, she would have done better in the Divas era. And the truth is, she's as good, if not already better, than most of the stars from that era.
You compare Maxxine right now to somebody like, oh God, yeah, and it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's like she's doing good. I think this didn't require a 3-day discourse.
Yeah,
like it really did not. Above all else, like I'm cool that they're sticking up for her and women supporting women, and I'm down for all that. But like 3 days of discourse for this, we do it here.
But I mean, I might follow up with something that might get me a bit of backlash, but there's also nothing wrong with being like a valet, as well, in the sense that like she is a very, I would say, super effective, but like she's a good wrestling character.
Great character.
She's doing good stuff. So, but it's more of a case of, the wrestling stuff she needs to develop in, and it's not a point of like, I get what Rob's saying about like people expecting people to do moonsaults and really flashy shit, but I think realistically they just expect like competence from the fundamentals, and I don't think Maxxine is particularly even well versed with that at the moment. But why should she be? It's not like she's been training for ages. She's been with WWE for 2-3 years at most, and she was fast tracked to the main roster before she'd even really done anything in NXT.
Yeah, Sophia Cromwell was just pointing.
Yeah,
that's all she did. She pointed.
Nothing that we saw anyway.
Well, no, she walked by people. Von Wagner got mad that people were looking at the pretty girl that he wanted, and then he beat them up. I thought,
but that's what I
thought was effective.
But that's what we saw on TV. Like, we didn't know whether she was having like matches in the background while that was happening. We didn't know whether she was like training at that point in time, or whether her initial role with the company was just to be like a valet or a character, and then she got transitioned into the wrestling side of things. So she has very, very little experience, and that is like evident in pretty much every match she's had so far. But yeah, as I say, as we keep saying, that she will get booed because by the standards of today's wrestlers, she's not anywhere near the level of pretty much the vast majority of people that she's working with or are on the same roster as her. So eventually, well, the hope is that eventually she'll step up and reach that level. But until then, there will probably be some kind of backlash. Because, I mean, fundamentally, like, I would be disappointed if there was a match featuring her on a house show that I'd pay to go see.
Unless it suddenly was like a really good match, then obviously you'd be like cheering.
Really good, if the match is really good, then yeah, I would be. But the likelihood, just based on everything I've seen from her, is that it wouldn't be that case. And yeah, it's like, I think that wrestling fans, I'll put it this way: as a fan going to a show, you have the right to boo someone. Don't then just go on social media and talk about how shit someone is. Really, just like you know. Find something else to do with your life instead.
Yeah, like that
tact is a good line.
Yeah. Okay, did you need that attention? Look at me, I booed her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't need to see a video. We don't need to see a video of you just doing that. So yeah, the guys in the video, yeah, you're probably a bit of a dick.
According to Cage Match, by the way, she's only had the 13 matches that we've seen her have, with like a couple of house show matches thrown in now against the likes of, besides the tag match against Jaina and Zoe with Ivy, she's also just wrestled Nia.
I think it's also part of, like, again, just more of a wider general issue that I think we've spoken about in the past about the way that the women in WWE are kind of either trained or expected to perform compared to the men. That there does seem to be a lot more emphasis placed on more flashier offense or gymnastics and other side of things with the way the women are trained to perform. Like, see it through, again, I don't watch NXT regularly, but when I do see matches involving the women in there, there's a lot of more just like flips and springboards and stuff involved with that, rather than just, fundamental basic wrestling.
Because everything, well, that's a general wrestling problem. Everything is so move-centric.
Mm-hmm. That's why you see people that, like, they don't have either the dexterity or the speed or the agility or whatever to do certain moves, and then they try to do like springboard moves, and all they do is they very slowly go from one side of the ropes to the other, and you're like, man, I know what you're going for here, where somebody like an AJ Styles would just do this like flawlessly and it would look fucking great, but just because you want to try to do it doesn't mean you're pulling it off, and then everybody has to do the whole thing where they all go like, well, they're trying, so.
I mean, I think that a lot of young or developing wrestlers in general, which would benefit more from, I don't know, like a New Japan approach, but a New Japan Young Lion approach, which is essentially every match you have is just the basic fundamentals of wrestling. It's not rest holds, but it's basic submissions, basic grappling, suplexes, just the meat and potatoes of wrestling, before then you add all the trimmings and the like cranberry sauce and all the other stuff with your flips and that stuff. You just have the very fundamental stuff that you need, and then you build off of that. That's how it should work, rather than going straight into, okay, so you have a gymnastics background, so you should start doing flips in the ring. It's like, how do you know how to put on a headlock? Who cares if you know how to put on a headlock? You can just flip around the ring for a little while. And I think that that's something that's permeating, obviously, in all areas of wrestling, but I think particularly in the women's side of things.
Right, because the women's evolution came at a time where there was a core group of women who knew what they were doing and knew that they knew what they were doing and wanted the chance to ply their trade at the highest possible level offered at the time. Not everybody coming in was going to be, Bayley or Sasha or even Charlotte. Like, Charlotte is the best case scenario of like, okay, she's kind of getting in here because she's Ric Flair's daughter, but she also just happens to be really good and she can do the gymnast stuff. Tiffany Stratton is a great example. She's taken to this really well and doing great. You know what I think would benefit Maxxine? Turn her heel, pair her with Chelsea, and let them be their real selves. They don't have to have good matches. Chelsea's great at not having good matches, but still being one of the most fun characters to watch on the show. There's nothing wrong with that. Not everything has to be, oh, and the women killed it. Yeah, like, it doesn't always need to be that. It could just be cool. They had a perfectly serviceable match. Look, good example. NXT this week had 3 women's matches, and they were perfectly serviceable. You know, it doesn't always need to be, well, they got to be about a main event Raw. No, they don't.
That's because everybody in this era, everything has to be, and we've said this a million times, it's 100 or it's 0.
Yeah, and by the way, fundamentally in life, I don't care what you're doing, that's a really shitty mentality.
Oh, it's awful. And it's yeah, I can't count the amount of times that I say throughout the day or the week some variation of the usual catchphrases of like, it's not that hard, mean what you say what you mean, all that stuff. But like, I would, I'll use this analogy. The wife and I have been watching old seasons of Survivor just kind of out of the blue. And the amount of times that I sit there and I go, my God, this would just not be an issue if they would have the most basic conversation. And that applies to almost everything in life. And I think that this is one of those stories where it's like, if everybody could get their heads out of their asses on both sides of the equation and just realize this is the most basic back and forth that you can get. Is the guy booing Maxxine crossing the line into some kind of like harassment, abuse type stuff? I don't think so. If he did, I think everybody would pretty much agree that's shitty. Should he have posted that? Probably not. There's really no benefit to him posting a video of him booing her. I don't see what he gets out of that. So he's kind of a dick. Tact is a big story when it comes to that. Should he be allowed to be booing whoever he wants and cheering whoever he wants? Absolutely. He paid his ticket for that. You can't make the argument that they should do that in all aspects unless they boo the person that you're not that you're a fan of. That doesn't work that way. You can't just say a special treatment. So if you want to try to make the argument that it doesn't matter if you boo or cheer John Cena as long as you're making noise, well, then it doesn't matter if you boo or cheer Maxxine as long as you're making noise. You cannot say it works one way and it doesn't work the other way. She's only had a few matches. She's getting her reps in.
She's had less than 20 matches.
Does it make sense that she's not the best person in the world in the ring? Absolutely. Does it mean she can grow in the future? Absolutely. Does it mean she should be judged as if she's a 20-year veteran? Totally, she shouldn't. Does it mean she should be judged as though she's actually putting on a performance in front of people that they're paying for it? Absolutely. Dana Brooke is a good example of everybody being like, man, she's there all the time and she's a hard worker, so shouldn't we just treat her as if she's the biggest deal in the world? No. Participation trophy ideas are good in some ways and they are bad in some other ways. Not everybody should be treated as if they are the best person in the world in every single possible way just because it's the nice thing to do. Then it loses all value. But at the same time, give credit to people who are hard workers. Maxxine seems like she's trying really hard. That's really cool. That's admirable. Maybe she's going to get really good in the future. Maybe this is the best that she can get. If this is the best that she can get, eventually they're going to stop having her wrestle and she can be a great manager. Or she'll move on to something else. In the meantime, boo her if you want. Don't be a dick about it. Cheer her if you want. Don't be an obsessive stan where you're like, she's the queen that deserves a 20-time championship run and whatever. She should be beating Rhea. Fucking hold your horses a little bit. Keep in mind that X-Pac heat is a term. So if it's totally okay for you to crap on somebody that you don't like when it's X-Pac, or if it's Top Flight or Top Dollar, not Top Flight, totally different.
Take Flight.
Totally different story. Top Flight versus Top Dollar. One can flip around like crazy. The other one can't do shit. Everybody can make fun of Top Dollar and nobody bitches and complains. Everybody makes fun of Nia and it doesn't seem like that's a big of an issue. But people jump to the defense for Maxxine just because they like her in a different way. Everybody should just fucking relax. She's green and that means she's not all that great. She could be in the future. Maybe she will, maybe she won't.
Yeah, I'll probably go in there and say, you can be a hater, you can be like an obsessive stan. Just shut the fuck up about it.
That's Callum speaks for me.
Keep your little jittery.
Keep your session. Keep your session. Keep your hatred to yourself. Don't go plastering it on social media because no one fucking cares.
Yeah.
I'll go a step further. If you want to do it once, fine. 3 days of discourse? No. Once is enough.
I'm so past stan culture and also vehemently, this is the worst thing in the world and it needs to die a horrible death culture. Like,
yeah, me too.
That whole the phrase of y'all need to touch grass, like I'd go so far as y'all need to be shot into the fucking atmosphere or something. Like, fucking relax, man. But then there's another story that's happened on Twitter. And this one is something that we should end off this episode, especially because we're an hour 45 minutes into this episode of Hot Takes. The Rock had put up a promo on Twitter about the Cody Rhodes situation. And I am assuming that this is going to be either played on SmackDown tonight or reiterated in like some kind of, he's going to rehash the same sort of thing in a different promo because The Rock's scheduled for an appearance tonight. But
he's scheduled for the next 3 weeks, by the way. Tonight and the next 2 weeks.
Which goes to show that that's the whole like, hey, let's have a stupid promo on Elimination Chamber and then have a follow-up on Raw that says watch SmackDown. I hate that they do this shit, but don't expect anything to happen up until SmackDown each particular week when it comes to this. But his basic promo was a lot of what we've been hearing, the whole Cody Crybabies things and stuff, but it kind of also seems like he's explaining what the actual behind the scenes thing was too. Maybe they're just playing into it and this isn't what happened, but it does kind of come off a little bit to me like this probably there is some truth to this, which boils down to, isn't it more important that we have The Rock versus Roman Reigns? Cody, you can have your title win at another time. It doesn't have to be at WrestleMania, but God, we just really need to have that Rock and Roman match at WrestleMania because that would be the biggest match of all time. And your whole idea of winning the championship doesn't have to be at Mania. So can you just like step aside? So it seems like that's actually what happened by all accounts of the way that they've been booking this so far, which to me is one of the most Hulk Hogan-esque sounding things imaginable. And if there is like validity to that being how they approached this, which is basically just, I'm more important than this whole title thing. Fuck off and win it at SummerSlam. Can your character just say, yes, you are more important than me winning the belt and me having my Royal Rumble thing and all? That's so fucking dumb. And I'm glad that it backfired and blew up in their faces.
Yeah, I'm not. And here's why. Because I have already begun hearing in my head the future documentaries that will talk about how, oh, isn't it great that the people use their voices and The Rock as the people's champion gave them what they want and turned heel. And I actually really enjoyed Rock's 21-minute promo explaining all of this because I do think that there's an element of reality here. I think that Rock probably did call Cody and say, hey, I'm going to be coming in and you kind of have to ice the whole story thing. And I can see Cody saying it stings, but yeah, that's a bigger match because, I'm a promoter. I know what the bigger match is. And then obviously the backlash was what it was. If we get more of that going forward, I'm okay with that. I didn't like what I saw on TV from The Rock. I don't want more of that where it's just, you Cody Crybabies. I like the idea that he was just like, bro, we agreed, you agreed, what the fuck? That was more intriguing to me than him going, oh, isn't it great? Shut up and enjoy the ride we're taking you on. Isn't it great that I'm a heel? That's not the build I want. But I know where this is going. They're just going to say, that's what happened. Cody now needs to really say, yeah, I was ready to give you the match because it is probably a better marquee match. And then I got home and my wife asked me what the hell I was doing. And then I looked at my daughter's eye, very Cody, very, I'm going to cry now and explain why this is a good story. But if they don't do that, it's annoying because all they're doing is saying, yeah, but you agreed not to give me the match. And yeah.
See, I hate that this has now become even more of a, within kayfabe story of a guy is willing to give up his title match at WrestleMania against the guy that he's had the most bitter feud with, that he is the most passionate about, because he's like, well, I agree that you're a bigger name and that I'm more concerned with the sales tickets and I'm going to bury myself in the process. This should not be a story. It shouldn't be about the behind the scenes thing.
Well, the problem is everything kind of is. And you see it across the board in all promotions. When you become so comfortable with saying that everything is work and fake, then this is what you get. You get these constant stories where it's like, oh, but the real behind the scenes drama, where it should have just been, you know what? I'm going to challenge Seth Rollins. If that's what they wanted to do, they should have just done that. If he was just going to go, I'm going to challenge Seth Rollins because when I do face Roman Reigns, I'm going to be the one and only champion in WWE because that's my goal.
I think they should have just if they wanted to do the Rock thing and they knew that from January 1st, they should have just not had Cody run the Royal Rumble.
Why, have Rock win the Royal Rumble?
Yeah. Fucking get out there and do it. If you want to have the big match and all that, you can go and pop up at number 29 or number 30 and wrestle for 5 minutes. If you can't do that, then you don't deserve to have a 4-month thing revolving around you having a shitty match at WrestleMania then.
I mean,
or somebody else should have just, like Drew McIntyre should have just won the Royal Rumble then or something. Or Punk should have won the Royal Rumble anyway. And then it could have been like, oh man, but the injury prevents me from doing that. Like, don't set up Cody for the idea that that it's not going to mean anything.
And it's past the point of like deserving. I mean, it doesn't really matter who deserves what in the grand scheme of things. It's about what's going to be the biggest draw. And in many people's eyes, The Rock and Roman is a bigger draw than Cody and Roman is. So, as I say, they went down whatever route they were going to do, and they've pivoted and they've changed it around, and now Rock is trying to, I guess, feels like he's obliged to come up with a reason or come up with a story about why the change happened, because otherwise it just feels like retconning the whole thing and just going in a completely different route. So he's trying to, I guess, weave all the narratives together. I assume that him and like Brian Gewirtz were working on that promo for about like 2 weeks before he delivered it to make sure they hit every point down. But I mean, there's two sides to it. One, it's like, okay, good on you for trying to put together a narrative to not just say like, okay, that thing on that episode of SmackDown just never happened and we're just moving on past it. Just try to fit it all together. But also, Tony's kind of right in saying that it makes Cody look stupid.
Well, the whole thing has made Cody. That's the whole problem. The whole thing has already made Cody look stupid.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it's not really a good thing for your challenger going into the WrestleMania main event to look like he's indecisive about what he's going to do.
That's kind of why I've said this a couple times now. It's kind of why I do wish that they just would have, hey, just run Rock and Roman, because anything you did was going to make everybody look stupid unless you just ran Rock and Roman. And the reality is the fans attending WrestleMania would have played along. They would have probably been more vocal during the Cody Seth match, but it would have been perfectly fine for Rock and Roman, because it wasn't like people didn't want to see that. It was just, we really just need to finish this goddamn story. And now you're overcomplicating things, and I don't know. Everybody looks bad here.
I think that the whole mess up was doing that stupid thing with not only Cody winning the Royal Rumble if you knew that you weren't going to have him fight Roman and trying to pivot, but the way that they tried to pivot in the first place. I think that they botched the whole thing, and that this never should have been. They wouldn't be in this position if they didn't set themselves up for failure.
I'd say what they need to do now is just move forward with the pieces that they have and just try and create a compelling story from this kind of moment onwards. Like, fundamentally, The Rock being involved in this match and being involved in the build to WrestleMania is a benefit, at least for the actual, not necessarily just for the overarching story, but for just WrestleMania as a whole. Having The Rock involved is a big thing for the show. So you have Rock now. He's clearly aligned with the bloodline, or at least like on the surface, because the different routes you could take with it. But on the surface, he's aligned to the bloodline. He's anti-Cody Rhodes, and Cody's on the other side, and Seth is on the other side. And we could have a tag team match on the first night of WrestleMania. We could, or we could just be just the main event, and then it's Rock's involved in that, and Rollins helps fight off of it. Whatever way it ends up turning, you've got all those pieces now. So just forget about so as stupid as it sounds, because now the damage on that side of things has already been done. Just forget how you got here. You're here now. Now move forward to WrestleMania. That's the only way you can really kind of salvage it.
I'm convinced that they still don't know what they're doing. And that, like, the Seth element of it is kind of confusing, and that they don't really know what they're going to do when it comes to, like, Cody's challenging The Rock for a match, and, you know, like, all that. We might get an answer tonight about, like, okay, well, night one it's going to be Cody against The Rock, and then, you know, whatever or something. I don't know, but I'm really hoping that this doesn't turn into one of those things that they just completely shit the bed on, where it ends up being like, all right, Cody doesn't win the match at Mania because they still want to hold off on Rock and Roman, and we don't get the Rock and Roman match instead. So then that crapped out, and then the Seth thing ended up being a mess for the World Heavyweight title. So then that sucks. And then the Punk thing, of course, is like out of their control, but there's a chance that this turns into, they figure it all out, it all works out great, and we're all happy at the end of Mania, and it sets up some good stuff in the future. There's a chance that some of it doesn't work out, and it ends up being like 50-50, like, man, the Rollins stuff worked out like shit, but the other stuff is good, or, you know, whatever it might be. There's also a chance that this is a messy road to WrestleMania that ends in the worst case scenario where everything sucks balls. And I'm really nervous that they haven't given me a reason yet to trust that they know what they're doing and that I'm going to enjoy it. The more time goes on, the more that we see things like that, what happened at Elimination Chamber, the more I'm like, I'm nervous that this is going to be the worst case scenario.
I mean, I can only speak personally, but I'm like so not nervous about them making the wrong decisions at WrestleMania.
Well, is that just because you're not as invested, or do you think that they're actually going to pull it off?
I think they're going to do everything right.
Yeah, I think at this point, what else is there to do?
Yeah, I mean, as we've probably beaten to death at this point, the only thing they have to get right is Cody wins the title, which I think they'll do. And then from that point on, it's like, really, like, how badly can you go wrong with the other stuff? Like, Rhea versus Becky, it's going to be a good match. Either one can win and it's fine. Bayley versus EO, Bayley wins.
Oh, I'm not even talking about like the Bayley stuff and whatever. I mean Cody, Rock, Roman, Seth, like those four, and the revolving things like McIntyre and all.
Well, yeah, well, essentially, it's just a case of, on night one, give me the tag match between those people, and it doesn't really matter who wins that one, because it doesn't really have a huge sway on the grand scheme of things, but it's just an interesting match to have. And then on night two, McIntyre beats Rollins, and then Cody beats Roman, and then you're kind of done, really. I don't think it's going to be, I say, maybe it is just a lack of, like, investment, but just I don't know, just logically looking at it, I don't really see where they're going to go wrong at this point.
Well, Tony approaches a lot of this from the worst case scenario standpoint, and granted, they haven't given him much of a reason not to in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But I do definitely think that they're going to get everything right. I also think that it kind of sucks because you literally have Drew McIntyre telling Seth Rollins, hey, don't get involved in the bloodline thing. It's just going to ruin everything. Like, it's all become back around to this. And even Roman looks worse than ever. Because now he's just like, I'm going to stand here and hold up the finger while Rock cuts promo.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's where I get worried about them not being able to juggle everything. Because I think that there's a chance that we come out of this with like Roman has been pushed to the side and then it doesn't feel as important for him to be in that position, that the Rock stuff doesn't feel like they're fully committing to it. We don't get the Rock and Roman thing, so people are upset about that. Cody potentially wins, potentially doesn't, but that ends up being a mess. They could do the whole Seth turns on Cody thing, which I think would be such a massive mistake. It could be, I could see them getting cold feet and like not accomplishing any of their goals because they don't want to do any of them 100%. And then we're looking at like, well, wait until Mania 41 for maybe over the next few months. We'll try to figure out another way for this to make sense. But I'm hoping that tonight they do something where I don't want The Rock to cut a promo that's exactly the same as what he just did on Twitter and then have that just be it. I would rather them do some kind of thing where it's like, okay, I accept the match against Cody. On night one, it's either going to be Rock against Cody, one-on-one, or it's going to be the tag match. Or it's going to be, maybe this is a way to do it. Maybe it's Rock against Cody. And Roman is in Rock's corner and Seth is in Cody's corner, if you don't want to do a tag match. And there's a stipulation where if The Rock beats Cody, he gets added to the match. Or if The Rock beats Cody, or if it's the tag match, if The Rock and Roman Reigns beat Cody and Seth, whatever, that like they get to pick the stipulation for the match on night 2, or like any kind of thing where it's like there's a purpose for that. And then I would like to see them then tell the story for the next few weeks of it should be Cody that does this. Puts it out there and goes, hey, Roman, by the way, like, you know, you're a fucking asshole and I hate you and like, I'm going to beat you and all this other kind of stuff. But aren't you a little annoyed that you have been completely usurped by The Rock and all this? And then they can sow the seeds of dissension there. To me, the best story you can tell is that, and then you come back around to it at WrestleMania. Maybe the ideal scenario is you have The Rock beat Cody on night 1 and he gets involved in the match in night 2 and it's a triple threat. Maybe you don't, and you just keep it straightforward. Maybe it's the stipulation is The Rock gets to be the special enforcer, or, you know, something along those lines. And then something happens where Roman and Rock have an issue. It leads to Cody winning the match, winning the title, Rock denouncing Roman and being like, you never were the fucking head of the table. I knew I couldn't fucking trust you to do this. You couldn't pull off having the big match against me at Mania. I would have beaten your ass anyway if that would have been the case. You lost to Cody. You lost the title. You are a disgrace. Get the fuck out of my ring. And then you can build up Roman as the babyface against The Rock next time. That would be my ideal scenario. And I am incredibly nervous that instead what we're going to get is Cody walks out of Mania as a loser. We want Rock and Roman for that belt. So you fans that got in the way of that, man, you're fucking annoying. But now that you made us have to do a little pivot, we're going to just have to make you wait until next year. And none of it ends up being like it all ends up being a stall tactic. That's what I'm worried about. Because if their mentality going into this was, it would be a perfectly good enough story for Cody to win the Royal Rumble and then just say, Rock is more important than me, take my match, they're out of fucking, like they're checked out of reality. That's stupid as all hell. To use a phrase, an old-timey phrase, they're out to lunch.
As we've said plenty of times on this podcast already, like, I think that they knew that a plan for WrestleMania was Cody Rhodes wins a world championship. I don't think they knew if they had The Rock. And then once The Rock said, "You've got me," then they said, "Hey, pal."
Do you think that they really kind of looked at it as, doesn't the world title mean the same?
Yes. 100%. I don't think... I think that genuinely they were going to be like, hey, let's tell the story that we don't need Roman. And Cody could have eventually gotten around to saying, I'm going to take everything from you, but first I'm going to win this title so that I can merge them.
Man, I really hope that wasn't their philosophy either, because if they set up a whole story for 2 years and then they said, but it actually doesn't matter and you can win anything, then fuck, man.
Well, they didn't set up anything. Cody, God bless him, was the one who was adamant.
They went along with it, though. Because he specifically said it's the WWE title. And if they didn't want him to say that, if they wanted to keep it open as like you can win whatever, then they could have very easily...
He never said it on TV. He said it in interviews. They were very clear not to have him say anything until it was Royal Rumble time.
Over the past 2 years? About, I want to win the WWE Championship? And
you forget, when he first came in, that was the only one to win. That's why it would have made the most sense for him to win last year.
All the more reason goes back to that, yeah. Which, by the way, also, just another little side thing. I keep seeing people saying, oh, but it's so much more important if Roman retains here so he can beat Hogan's record and lose the title at SummerSlam. He can't beat Hogan's record and lose at SummerSlam, motherfuckers. He has to go to September. So all you people thinking that that's going to happen because of that reason, do the math, you dipshits.
But again, the fact that like there's this endless discourse, and even on this very podcast, like, we've had to tell you, like, no, they're going to do the right thing. That's terrible that you have installed in your fan base. You cannot trust us.
Oh, yeah.
With what you want.
Now, WWE is in a boy who cried wolf situation. Prove to me that you can actually follow through with something, and then prove to me that you can continue to follow through with those things, and then I'll trust you. But when you have had way too many instances in the past of stalling and then just saying like, well, we'll come around to it later and it'll all make sense, and then later on comes around and then they go, well, shit happens, but we didn't get around to doing it. Timing was bad and we just decided to change our minds, and then you invested a couple years worth of stories into something that just fizzled out, and then they go, move on, deal with it, move on, suck it up. Then that makes me go, I shouldn't invest myself as much. So if they have the right stuff going on with this, then that'll go in a good way going forward and making me go, well, they pulled that off. Otherwise, they make me go back to, you told me to invest time in Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton, and that fucking sucked balls at WrestleMania. You told me to, you'd have a good thing with Braun Strowman at WrestleMania. That was stupid. You told me whatever. Like, I can think of countless examples. 4 horsewomen versus 4 horsewomen. Tease that, never got around to it. So tonight, though, seems to be another one of those episodes of SmackDown where they are very much just kind of being like, The Rock's going to be here. You're going to watch it for that reason. And then we'll just kill time for the rest of the 2 hours. I'm going to do what I've been doing recently for SmackDown, which is I start recording it on my DVR and I tune in at around like 9:20, and then I fast forward through the vast majority of the episode because I can get through the full 2 hours within about half hour. If I really just want to skip through the other stuff, like, I don't care about, if they, what's the matches that are announced for tonight? I'm blanking on it because now I cared so little.
It's Carlito and Escobar in a street fight. It's
Naomi against Tiffany Stratton. Okay, Tiffany Stratton wins. And then like Carlito continuing that thing. Like, I like Carlito, I like Santos, and I like a street fight, but I don't think I really need to necessarily watch that. And I don't think I'm going to miss out on anything. Oh, and Bailey and Dakota against Kabuki Warriors. Well, it is what it is. So,
okay, last thing we're going to talk about, but real quick. If you were just going to put Bianca on all the damn posters, maybe she should have won the Royal Rumble. You put Bailey on a single thing. I'm sorry. It
is weird.
It's a little silly at this point.
They have gone out of their way to make Belair the focal point beyond Rhea. And in some ways, even more so than Rhea. And the whole, like, you can't spell WrestleMania without EST. And like, oh, I'm going to do something at Mania, whatever. And man, they are just ignoring the fuck out of Bailey. And I know that there's at least one executive out there that's like, well, Bianca's a great marketing tool because she's a strong black female woman that is very popular and all that. And we can do something with that. But man, give her something to do at Mania first before you start doing this. Like, I don't know. We'll see. I at this point, I'm not entirely convinced that they know what they're doing for almost any of the matches at Mania. Clearly Gunther and Brock Lesnar's not happening, so they're pivoting to something else. The Randy Orton stuff with Logan Paul throws out the Kevin Owens thing. LA Knight and AJ Styles, I don't think is 100% set in stone, but it probably is. I don't think we have any idea what's happening with a lot of the Mania card. It wouldn't shock me if we find out later on that they won't solidify the Mania card until at least next week, which is very dangerously close. But we'll figure out if they do any twists tonight on SmackDown. In the meantime, there's the hot tags that I got.
Yeah, we talked enough.
Yeah, 2.5 hours almost or something. Of course, if we did miss something, drop that in the comment section below. Pop on over to Discord and chat it up about anything that else is going on, or if you want to do the live chat for SmackDown or something like that. Make sure that you are, of course, checking out the link tree. Go to amangotree.com. You'll see links to Smark Out Moment stuff, Fanboys Anonymous stuff, Letterboxd, Patreon, LinkedIn, even my Instagram I never post on, all that kind of shit. At Tony, Mango, all over the place. Of course, obviously, keep checking out smarkoutmoment.com and check out what's going on with Rob and Callum, too.
Yep, you can follow me everywhere at Dude Felice. Check out my work on Fightful. And yeah, we'll see you for Revolution.
So you can find me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. You can check out the Power Rankings every single week over on the Smark Out Moment website, where I'm ranking the WWE superstars based on their previous week's performances. And you can also check out the Fantasy League over at www.fantasyleague.com, where we're on the final stretch before WrestleMania. So it's the last chance to pick up some extra points before the big show itself, where we will determine who is the winner of this year's competition. So stay tuned with that at www.fantasyleague.com.
I'm just noticing now Cody Rhodes apparently
yep, I'm literally writing an article.
Tweeted out about his response, which is a screenshot of text saying, "I ain't watching all that. I'm happy for you though," or "Sorry that happened." I'll give this man the belt. Oh, and by the way, I guess Pharaoh is going to be in 2K.
Yeah, he's not actually playable.
Not playable,
sad,
but like that they put the model into the game. Is that what it is?
No, I would hope so. I know that he's a My Faction card. I don't know if Pharaoh is going to be in the game. The Rock did talk shit about Pharaoh though, so maybe we get Pharaoh biting the Rock on the ass. Be great.
Maybe Pharaoh needs to be part of a mock draft in the future or something. I don't know. Maybe the animal mock draft, which could include The Rock because he's Brahma Bull. Go back to that old Ask Him. All right, everybody. Well, that's going to do us in. Of course, thank you, as always, for listening to this episode. Thank you in advance for checking us out for the AEW Revolution pay-per-view point post-show immediately following the event on Sunday night. Stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for what we've got coming up next week, which currently the plan right now is to do Superstar Score's Sting to kind of wrap up his career. And, maybe we can get into some other kind of topics outside of there. Maybe that'll be when we do the Darkcast, although currently the Darkcast plan is to do an episode of Hall of Lame a little bit later on in March. But, sometimes we do. Sometimes we do 3. God knows. But you can always do the Pick Your Poison tier if you want us to do anything in particular over the next couple weeks or so. That's it for the hot tags, and we will see you next time, everyone. This has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.